Moto Edge 60. Is this the mid-range smartphone of the year, or is it another bland, disappointing phone from a brand that used to be so prominent in the smartphone market and it's fighting to come back with its bold design and flagship specs for that mid-range price? Well, let's find out in my full review. Hope you like the video. Remember, please like, comment and subscribe. It makes a real difference. So in terms of design, the Moto Edge 60 has a 6.67 inch OLED display with a maximum brightness of 4,500 nits. Now that's the specs, however, I don't really see how they're getting this from. I know that's peak brightness. They do claim that auto mode brightness is around 1,400 nits. However, it can't be the case. This device is actually a really nice panel on this device, but I don't think it's that bright. It's really contrasty, colours are quite vibrant when you set it to the mode in the display settings. It's definitely sharp enough, and at this price point it's definitely a highlight. So the back of the device is made out of some sort of rubberized plastic, and it's actually a really nice finish. I mean, I'd much rather this than a flat plastic panel that obviously cheapens the experience at this price point. So I think this does feel super premium at this price point. Really grippy, nice to hold, also has a scent to it. A lot of Moto Edge devices have a scent out the box, and this one definitely follows suit. So hello Moto. Moto's software skin on top of Android is, to be honest, one of my favourites. It's got a lot of criticism for sort of the app tray change and stuff like that, but what people just don't do is just go into the settings and just make it how you like it. It's clean, it's not cluttered. You can do the split control center, which I personally really like, so you can have your notifications on this side and obviously these side, and again you can actually add the names into the icons as an option, whereas default it doesn't have it. So I like to have the names for each icon so I can tell exactly which one is when you're switching between lots of different Android devices like I do. And it's just really nice. You've got the shape for the camera, you've got all the Moto classics. Again, you can twist to open the camera as well. Again, not the most accurate, but I don't use this device that often, so it's more technique than actual systems issues. What I would say is though, I don't find the UI that smooth. Something like Phantom Touch OS on Vivo devices and Huawei's EMUI or Honor's Magic OS, definitely much smoother. Something like the Honor 400 Pro definitely has a smoother UI than this. Sometimes you can wait for it a little bit of a while for it to sort of load certain apps, and it can be a little bit less sort of smooth and buttery as some devices. That might be down to the Dimensity 7300 chipset this device uses, which does the job. Doesn't actually get that hot either. Stays really cool, really efficient. Battery life on this is fantastic. I believe it's around a 5200 milliamp battery, around that sort of figure. Again, I'm not one for specs here, but the 68 watt charging charges it quick enough. I would have liked to have seen wireless charging for it to be a real flagship killer, but it doesn't have that. However, yeah, it does the job really, really well. Battery lasts all day, nothing more. And it's smooth enough, although it's not flagship performance, you're not paying a flagship price, so what can you expect? Would I say it's on par with the Honor 400 Pro? No, but then it does beat something like the Nothing 3A Pro, which I was disappointed with how laggy and slow that device could feel. I do notice the limitations in the camera app. Sometimes it can take a while for it to load. You can see the shutter lag is quite bad, to be honest with you. Changing between lenses is also quite bad. Look at that delay. I get like a few second delay, and obviously that's because I am used to using a flagship device, but I have to keep my reviews consistent and honest. So we're going to test the cameras on the Moto Edge 60. So I'm going to show you samples with the internal mic and obviously without the internal mic, and I'm going to show you photo and video samples from this device on all of its cameras. So let me know what you think in the comments below. So we've got that 50 megapixel ultra wide lens, which I am really pleased to say can do 4K at 60 frames per second footage. So you're hearing this from the internal mics of the device. Stabilization, of course, is pretty good. and we can check out the focus on this device by going quite close to here. And again, you can see that this device has autofocus on its ultra-wide lens, which obviously can be used for macro and photos. Fairly smooth as well. Colours fairly accurate, slightly more vibrant than maybe the eye can see, but it is nice to have. And again, we're gonna crop in. This is a zoom on the ultra-wide lens, because you can't actually change lenses when you are in a video on the ultra-wide lens at 4K at 60 frames per second. So I have to stop the video and we'll switch to the main camera. So we are now at the main camera on the Moto Edge 60. Some slight chronic aberrations around there. Fairly sharp. Not too much noise. You can see we've got some nice bokeh around there as well. All handheld footage, of course. And now we are shooting from the main camera. We can actually crop in, so that's a 2x zoom. So we're now using that 10 megapixel telephoto lens. Colours seem quite consistent throughout the video as well, even between the lenses. And again, I'm going to go to that 3x. So you can see now we're starting to get slightly over sharpened result, but a nice steady pan. We do drop a few frames, but overall really not bad at all. So again, 2x now, back to 1x. And that's the video on the Moto Edge 60 with its internal mics at 4K 60 frames per second. So these are the camera samples of the Moto Edge 60. Now, of course, it's going to seem a little harsh here comparing it to the Vivo X200 Pro, but let's be honest, you need a benchmark. You know, I'm not expecting it to be as good or as comparable to this device as other flagship phones, but you need something to compare it to really show those mid-level specs. Well, let's get on to the good. The natural depth of field in video and with that main camera sensor can create some nice results. Of course, the telephoto lens is not the strong point here. Colour reproduction is also slightly strange. I'm not a massive fan of the colour profile Motorola go for. You do have slightly different filters and stuff like that in the camera app, but it's nothing that really inspires me or grabs the attention. Sharpness does remain quite strong. It's not over sharpened and it has a nice amount of sharpness. Contrast is also fairly well balanced. It's sort of that aesthetic look that pleases most people, but of course that's what this device is aimed at. Don't push that telephoto lens too hard, because you're definitely not going to get the strongest result. It does the job and it's a nice addition, but it's definitely not a strong point. Of course, at this price point you can't expect flagship specs, but there is devices that does deliver a lot more in terms of camera at this price point. But for the everyday person, these shots are going to be just fine. In daytime and good lighting conditions, the shots here are pretty good. However, when it comes to more challenging dynamic range scenarios or nighttime, unfortunately this camera definitely struggles here, and other competitors such as Honor definitely do a better job in those dim lit conditions. This is not a super detailed camera video, and it's not a large section here, because to be honest with you, the people that are buying this device are not buying it for the cameras. They're serviceable and they do the job, but they're definitely nothing spectacular, and it's definitely not worth buying a device for these cameras. And again, just to show you, this device does have stereo speakers, and in the footage you can see I'm comparing it to the Vivo. Again, they claim to be tuned by Dolby Atmos here, but they definitely are not a strong point. They do the job and they're fine, but there's nothing to write home about here. That being said, what's my final verdict on the Moto Edge 60? Well, to be honest with you, it's a great phone. It definitely looks like a flagship device when it costs slightly less. Nice build quality, display is quite nice, contrasty if so a little bit dim, but definitely nice to have something different here, and definitely an underrated brand still in the smartphone market. You know, Hello UI from Motorola is definitely a nice software skin, not too heavy, but gives you all the customization you need. Cameras that do the job, the battery will last you all day. Bit of a shame that there's no wireless charging here, and sometimes it can be a little bit of a struggle to stand out, but I think that's where Moto leans into its design language.